Order. February 23rd, 2017, meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission. Next order of business is the pledge. Chip, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item, any additions or deletions to the agenda? None? None? Okay. Next item, approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Chip.
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Day. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, not necessarily in addition to the meeting or anything like that, but I just wanted to recognize our new member that's here. It's sitting here.
Well, I do apologize. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I didn't know that you weren't here.
And
I apologize. Again, I wasn't there, so I do apologize.
We should congratulate you again on being vice chairman without being here or anything like that.
An impressive feat.
2 years in a row, and I'm sure your string will continue if you continue to miss the first meeting in January. We've got Patrick Grawl that has joined us on Planning and Zoning. He's Commissioner Adams' appointment, and we'd just like to welcome Patrick to the meeting.
Welcome, Patrick. I apologize. Next item is Point West, East Village Phase 2, request for preliminary PED plat approval for 161 residential lots. Redis EL LLC is the owner. Mastella Reed and Moeller are the agent, located on the east side of 74th Avenue, south of 16th Street, and is bound by the Point West Golf Course on 3 sides and by the East Village on 1 side, which is the west side. Zoning, PD, TND, Planned Development Traditional Neighborhood Design, Land Use Designation, AG1, Agricultural 1 unit per 5 acres, Phase 2 density, 3.35 units per acre. Overall Point West density is 1.99 units per acre. PD-17-02-01, 9907-0081-78258. This is quasi-judicial, so at this time, anybody would like to speak on this matter, please stand up and be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll turn everything over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John McCoy with the Indian River County Planning Staff for the record.
Mr. McCoy, if I could just interrupt, I just briefly, as far as any prior knowledge or prior experience with this matter, has any board member been contacted or have any prior experience with the Point West development that is here before us this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Brawl. I do. I, as a resident of the Point West East Village, currently in Phase 1, for full disclosure.
And would your residence there prohibit you from making a fair decision based on the testimony and the matters before you?
None whatsoever.
Very well. Any other conflicts or disclosures by the board? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you.
And thank you all. John McCoy for the record. This is a request for the Point West East Village Phase 2 preliminary PD approval. Phases 1 and 2 were approved in 2005. Phase 1 was subsequently built. Phase 2 subsequently expired the preliminary plan development. The applicant is now seeking reapproval of the Phase 2 preliminary PD, and it's essentially the same request as was approved in 2005. The next slide shows the location of the subject site, and it is to the east of the first phase. To the west, you see the platted and developed portion of Phase 1 of the East Village. The subject site is zoned PD TND. The next slide shows the land use. Again, the subject site's outlined in red. This is an aerial of the subject site and the East Village. On the north is 16th Street. On the west is 74th Avenue. And again, you can see the development within the Phase 1 of the East Village, and there are actually more homes under construction than what you would see on this aerial. It's a early 2016 aerial. The proposal is to construct 161 lots on roughly 50 acres with some park tracks, rights-of-ways, and accessory development to the overall residential development. This is the layout for the preliminary plat. Phase 2 is proposed to be constructed in essentially two subphases. Phase 2A on the south, Phase 2B on the north, and it's roughly half of the south half being the first phase, north half being the second phase. As far as traffic circulation, the existing access points will serve the new development. There'll be there's an existing access point to 16th Street, which is now paved, and 74th Avenue. And those existing entry points will continue to be used. There'll be no more external access. So there'll be access through those points, and then the individual lots will be accessed from internal streets within Point West or within the new construction. As far as improvements, the applicants are required to provide streetlights, and those streetlights are required to be provided prior to a certificate of completion, and that's really the completion of all the horizontal construction, paving, grading, drainage, utilities, those types of items. So the streetlights would be part of that. As far as sidewalks, the sidewalks for the common areas would also be prior to a land development permit, and those are the areas where the park tracks and things like that for the common areas. Sidewalks for the individual homes will be constructed with the individual homes as the individual homes are constructed. So essentially, a lot of times those sidewalks, if constructed early, get constructed twice because they get torn up with the home construction. As far as new models, the applicants indicated that there won't be any new models proposed. If there are new models, essentially they need to be reviewed by staff prior to being implemented, so we can make sure that they're consistent with the overall Point West conditions and the T&D criteria for those models. As far as environmental issues, there are specimen trees on the site, and those will require a mitigation plan prior to the issuance of a land clearing tree removal permits, and also prior to the issuance of a land development permit. So really, prior to beginning any earthwork, the mitigation plan for the specimen trees will need to be in place. And then secondly, there's a small wetland on the site, and again, prior to any land clearing, tree removal, land development permit issuance, any earthwork, the applicant will need to obtain a wetlands resource permit. This aerial, I'll use the cursor a little bit. There are some trees generally scattered, but most of the environmental aspect is in this north section where the wetland is and where the majority of the trees are. There's also some new exotic invasives. If memory serves, this area was fairly cleared with the Phase 1. Again, that was 2005, 2006, and there are a fair amount of nuisance exotics out here. With that, I would like to get to the landscape plan, and it's primarily a street tree plan, a greenway plan, and a plan for landscaping the common areas. This is the common area tract, and as with some of these, there'll be essentially the houses will front a greenway with sidewalks, and those are the trees you see in these white areas here. With that, I would like to get to the recommendation. Staff does recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant preliminary PD approval with the conditions as listed. Those include the street lights, the landscape plan, the wetland resource permit, and the tree mitigation, and then any architectural design review if necessary. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of staff? Would anyone like to come up from the audience and speak?
Good evening, Steve Moeller from Masteller Moeller for the record. John did a great job as usually describing our project, so I don't have anything to add. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer though.
Any questions?
One question regarding the plan, noticing where the existing trees were in the southeast corner there's an open space. Is that A pond, is that just a green space, or what exactly is it?
I'd have to look at the plan. Quite frankly, John Boyer from our office was more involved in the project design. John, can you point that out to me where that might be?
Let me see if I can go back to the,
I think any pond would be on the golf course.
in the southeast corner, are we speaking right here? No.
No,
Right there.
right to the left.
Here?
There you go.
Oh, yes, that's a common area tract.
Right, that area is not proposed to be a pond. That is a common area tract that would be landscaped with trees.
Okay.
Any further questions? Okay. Can I get a recommendation?
Move to approve with staff's recommendations.
I have an approval by Dr. Day to approve with staff recommendations. I have a second from Commissioner Waltrip. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The decision is unanimous.
All right, thank you. All right, welcome aboard, Angela.
Next order of business is item number 5, a public hearing. FPNL Indian River Solar Energy Center request for special exception use approval for a private heavy utility facility, Solar Energy Center. Florida Power and Light Company is the owner. Culpeper and Turpinning Inc. are the agent, located on the east side of 122nd Avenue Southwest, immediately north of Indian River County and St. Lucie County boundary. Zoning A2, agricultural 2, 1 unit per 10 acres. Land designation AG2, agricultural 2, 2 units per 10 acres. SP-SE-17-03-01/2016110089-7835-8. This matter is quasi-judicial. Anybody who'd like to speak on this matter, please rise and be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
And has any commissioners had any ex parte communications that inhibit them from coming to a conclusion without prejudice?
Just for full disclosure, I did it. Sorry. For full disclosure, I did attend the open house that FPL held about a month ago on this issue, but there was nothing there that would prevent me from ruling one way or the other.
Thank you for disclosure. Now I'd like to turn things over to staff for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. For the record, I am Ryan Sweeney, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. Tonight we have an application for a special exception use request for a private heavy utility in the A2 zoning district. The proposed solar energy center meets the definition of a private heavy utility. I'll start with a brief overview of the special exception process. Special exception uses require appropriateness and compatibility of the requested use and with the subject site, and generally those are what are deemed the general criteria for special exception uses, or the 97105 criteria, as well as the specific land use criteria for the specific use itself. The special exception use process requires 2 public hearings, one which we're holding tonight in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and a subsequent public hearing in front of the board. The Planning and Zoning Commission is to recommend to the board to approve the request, approve with conditions, or to deny the request. The board will make the final ruling. This is an overall location map, sort of a county-wide scale, showing where the project site is located. State Road 60 is across the top of your screen. 122nd Avenue, which is really effectively just a 2-way dirt road, leads down to the project site, and the site is all the way down on the east side of 122nd Avenue Southwest, immediately north of the Indian River St. Lucie County boundary. Here's a zoomed-in version of the location map showing the immediate surrounding properties, as well as, again, its proximity to St. Lucie County. The subject site is zoned A2. All of the surrounding properties are zoned A2 as well. Here's an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the subject site. Generally speaking, it's mostly abandoned citrus groves, some active citrus groves on adjacent sites. Here's a depiction of the overall site plan depicting effectively the area of development, which is roughly the north half, approximately 350 acres, as well as the remainder of the site, which is to remain vacant at this time, is the south half, approximately 350 acres as well. Here's a slightly zoomed in version, although it's still hard to make out some of the details. Again, this is a rather large site. But generally it shows the solar arrays, which are the very small rectangles. It's hard to make out at this resolution, are individual panels. When linked together, they comprise a solar array, as well as the stabilized access pathways that are east-west, as well as a sort of a northwest to southeast configuration, and an on-site substation. Excuse me. Here's a detail of the vehicular access plan showing a gated, stabilized driveway connection to 122nd Avenue Southwest, and again, that typical stabilized access pathway. The angled pathways are generally 16 feet wide, and the east-west pathways are generally 20 feet wide. And here's a detail of the driveway connection to 122nd Avenue Southwest. The project access route is generally from I-95 to the intersection of State Road 60 and 122nd Avenue, then south down 122nd Avenue to the project site. Some of the materials will come from the west, from the turnpike, but generally speaking, most of the construction vehicles will come from I-95. There are a condition in the staff report, as recommended by the Public Works Department, is there are several, at least one, if not several, county culvert crossings along the construction access route that will need to be reinforced with asphalt millings to help protect the culvert crossings themselves. A majority of the southern portion of the route is actually within the St. John's Improvement District, so that will be subject to their protocols, but the county right-of-way culvert crossings will be reinforced per the Public Works Director's recommendation. I also want to mention while I'm on this slide, the subject site is actually currently 3 different parcels, and the solar arrays do span at least the northern 2, so we are requiring a unity of title to combine those 2 parcels. They have the option to combine all 3 or to leave the remaining parcel, which will be vacant, as a separate piece. This is a detail of the landscape plan, which generally is only the substation itself at the northeast corner, and really it's just the perimeter of the substation. The south and the west are interior to the site and are not required to be screened with landscaping, but the outside perimeters will be provided with landscaping as shown on the plan. And with that, I'll get to staff's recommendation, which is that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the board to grant special exception approval for the proposed solar energy center with conditions stated in staff's report. And those include the unity of title, the landscape improvements, and the county culvert crossing improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of staff? Would anybody from the gallery like to come up and speak? I open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bruce Barquette. I'm representing the applicant, Florida Power and Light. Like Steve, I want to thank the staff for a great presentation. And I was not part of the process in the beginning, but I understand the cooperation and the back and forth between the staff and the applicant has been above board and perfectly harmonious, which I appreciate. We have a brief PowerPoint which we could present. It just gives a little more information about the process and the site if you'd like to hear it. And it's a 5-minute. Otherwise, we're ready for you to take your vote, and if we support the staff recommendation as presented.
It's your choice, Mr. Barquette, if you'd like to present the presentation or not.
It depends on whether you guys want to go home or not. Sure, let's do it. All right. I'd like to introduce Ms. Krista Hendricks to start the presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, never mind. They changed on me.
It's a PDF.
Good evening. Okay, thank you. My name is Bart Getchins, Area External Affairs Manager. Wanted to give you a little background on who we are. Our parent company is NextEra Energy, and as you can see in the depiction here, NextEra Energy is outside, the parent company works in renewable energy outside of Florida. You can see in the green area, we have locations up in Canada and throughout the United States. We are the world's #1 producer of renewable energy from wind and sun. We operate in 30 states and Canada, but Florida is our home. We are consistently recognized among Fortune World's most admired companies. Within the state of Florida, where Florida Power and Light operates in 35 counties, we are the largest of the 55 electric utilities in the state of Florida. We serve approximately 4.8 million customers, and that's customer accounts, so approximately 10 million people, and we're the 3rd largest utility within the United States. Something we're very proud of is our record. We're continuing to work on improving reliability and reducing emissions while keeping our bills low. 35% below the national average with our CO2 emissions. 99.98%, still room to improve, and we're doing it. And our bills are expected to remain below the 2006 level through 2020. A little bit about where we've been. We've been leading the smart, cost-conscious expansion of Florida's solar effort for more than a decade. The first plant we developed, the solar facility, was over in DeSoto County in 2009, a large-scale solar plant, the largest of its kind when it was built. Up just in the county north to us, in Brevard County, we've got the Space Coast Next Generation Solar Energy Center, which came online in 2010. That was a partnership with NASA at the Kennedy Space Center. In Martin County in 2010, the world's first hybrid solar and natural gas energy center. In 2016, we had a lot of activity. The Babcock Solar Ranch, a partnership with the Babcock Ranch over on the West Coast in the community. 2016 again, the Manatee Solar Energy Center, adding more zero-emission energy centers to our clean natural gas plant. And over in Citrus, in DeSoto, our Citrus Solar Energy Center, expanding near our first solar plant. And with that, now to give you some more details on this project, I'd like to introduce our project manager, Krista Hendricks. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Krista Hendricks. Good evening, and thank you so much for your time today. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the project, the Indian River County Solar Energy Center. You know, the property we're proposing to build is located west of I-95. As staff mentioned, we're building a 355-acre solar energy center within the St. John's Improvement District. In exploring areas that would be ideal for solar, we look for land that is affordable, land that is close to our existing transmission lines, land that is flat and with minimal environmentally sensitive areas. This land was ideal for this project. Pending all of our approvals and permits from Indian River County, we intend to start construction of the site this spring, and we anticipate being done by the end of the year. Once in operation, since these facilities are unmanned and require very little maintenance, we expect there will be no additional demand on public services, such as water and sewer. Wanted to present this slide for you just to give you an overview of how solar energy works. The facility we're proposing will use stationary solar panels, which will convert energy from the sun to direct current electricity. You can see here there's an inverter box which converts the power from DC to AC, which is alternating current, which is usable power. Once the electricity goes through the inverter, it goes onto the transmission lines, and the power can then be delivered to businesses and homes. The next slide depicts the typical components that you'll see on a solar facility. The image on the left are the piles. Those piles are basically the main support system for the panels. It's driven approximately 10 feet into the ground, and then the primary support or the racking system is then installed. Once the racking system is installed, it's followed by the individual solar panels. Wanted to point out to you, as you can see in the photos, there is no concrete used or any mass grading required for installation of the panels. Lastly, as you can see on the bottom of the photos there, the panels sit pretty low to the ground. They're roughly 2 feet off of the ground and at a base height of about approximately 7 feet tall. The photo you see is a rendering of how the project will look once it's constructed. Just to orient you, 122nd Avenue is to the left, State Road 60 is up to the north. Some of the key features of the site, of course, are the solar panels or the solar arrays, the inverters. We are proposing to also construct a substation, and we talked about earlier the stabilized access paths, which will be used for maintenance of the site. As you can see, too, from the aerial view, there are no residential neighbors around the site. Lastly, we are really excited to bring the first universal-scale solar facility to Indian River County. Like many Floridians, we're big fans of solar, and we are looking forward to constructing this site in the county. We expect to employ about 200 construction jobs throughout the construction cycle. And once in operations, the panels will sit quietly just harvesting emissions-free energy for Indian River County and for Florida. We appreciate your time. We look forward to continuing this relationship with the county, and we are open for any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
I've got one. What's your protocol for securing the site in the event of an approaching hurricane and the tornadoes that might spawn?
So the site, the panels themselves are, let's go back here. The panels themselves will be installed with braces. They have been tested for very high wind loads and will be installed per the Florida Building Code. We did have our sites by the Kennedy Space Center that experienced a little bit of Hurricane Matthew, and we did not have any issues with those panels at that site. So we do not anticipate any issues.
Any further questions?
Couple. You mentioned the wind loads. I mean, what exact wind velocity are they scheduled for or set up for?
I do not know the answer to that, but maybe someone in the audience from my team can probably answer that question. This is Kelly Fagan with our construction team.
For the record, Kelly Fagan with Florida Power and Light. Again, thank you this evening for having us. We do design to the Florida Building Code wind loading maps. So the current wind loading for this site, I believe, is about 120 miles an hour. So we will design to those loads. The panels themselves and the posts and piles typically are designed for higher wind loads because they're standard materials. So you'll see typically anywhere between 145 and 150 mile an hour for those components. The thing that we do our wind loading testing on are the clips or the clasps that actually hold the panels onto the frames. So those will be wind load tested for the actual wind load in the area.
And then another question, you mentioned the inverters. That has to access eventually to the transmission lines. And how do you tie the transmission lines in? Because they're up and down 95 right now, correct? So how are they going to be tied in?
Separate from this proposal, we do have a transmission corridor that we're proposing to connect this site with our existing transmission line, the Malabar Midway line that is just directly east of the site.
Any further questions? Any further?
So do you subcontract the ground maintenance? How is the area maintained?
Sure, yes, we will have a company that will come out and do vegetation management for the site.
Okay. Any further questions? No? Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak? No? With that, I close the public hearing. Commissioners, do you have any further questions of staff? No? So what's your pleasure?
Move to approve with staff's recommendations.
Motion to approve with staff recommendations from Dr. Day.
Second.
Second from Mr. Roll. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The vote is unanimous. Next order of business, Commissioners' Matters. Does anyone have any matters they'd like to bring up? None? Okay, I'll move on to planning matters.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, Community Development Director. Thank you all for being here this evening, and we do plan on having matters for the next two meetings, the two meetings in March 9th and March 23rd. So we believe we'll have agendas for each of those meetings. That's all that I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Attorneys matters.
No, sir.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.